Well, thank you everybody for giving some time on this beautiful day to hear some updates since our session last brought you an update in February at our meeting. Our project regeneration work is continuing, and we want to kind of remind people or let you know for the first time, if you haven't been staying up with that, what we've been about and what we see is the next part of our journey. I want to thank our elders who are amazing folks and great people to work with in this process of discernment. And I thank you for your prayers and your love and support that continues to make our church a vital place to be together. We are on Zoom as well as here. And one of the practicalities of that is that after the presentation, there will be a time for questions and answers. You can either opt to come forward and stand here to ask your questions so that it is picked up, or if you would prefer to stay in your seat to make your question or comment, whoever is up here will repeat that so that we be sure that everybody on Zoom can also hear. And we'll have people monitoring the Zoom so that if Zoom people have something that they would like to share, they can physically raise their hand or use the little raise hand button on Zoom when the time comes. But let's enter this time together.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start with a recap of history. So the last time that we got together with kind of a formal presentation like this was about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, actually. But I want to cast us back so that everybody is level set even how we got to there. So if you think back all the way to 2019 and 2020, we were already working on a strategic planning process. We were thinking about what does the future of the church look like? How should we be stewarding our resources? Where should we be focusing our ministry? There were already these questions in our minds. And also in that time, we changed from two full-time pastors to a full-time pastor and a director of youth and family ministry. So that was a big change. Part-time, yes, thank you, Nancy. So that was a big change for our church. Then as we were thinking about, okay, now we need to keep moving this thing forward, we all know what happened. This thing called COVID that kind of derailed pretty much everything in the entire world. It also derailed our strategic planning process as we had to orient to how do we continue to serve, worship, be Pennington Presbyterian during the time of COVID. So coming out of COVID to the second half of 2023, and this is stuff that we all went through last year, there was water damage noticed in the building. We had some exterior issues we'd noticed. There were worries about what was going on in the towers. So Session brought in HMR architects to review. They did a complete review of the outside of the sanctuary building. And they also went inside the towers to look specifically for the water damage. Out of that detailed analysis, they recommended a set of repairs that needed to be done. It totaled about $1.6 million. That's a big number. So at that point, Session started to think about a capital campaign, because obviously $1.6 million is not something that we could absorb in our regular operating budget. So we started to think about that. And like a month later, we hit the pledges that came in for 2024 were significantly lower than our regular operating budget expected. So that led to the second ask, which was wonderfully successful. The generosity of the congregation, people stepped up. That was wonderful. But that's kind of the mindset we were in at the end of 2023. So 2024, because of thinking about the capital campaign, thinking about the need for the second ask, Session kind of said, hold on, do we need to think about something a little bigger? Not just do a capital campaign and just keep on moving forward. So that led to launching Project Regeneration, which came from a work that the Presbyterian Foundation does to help churches around the country figure out what their next steps are. And so we launched that, and that led us to reviewing a lot of data. So the Presbyterian Foundation brought us in contact with experts who looked at data about our community. What does Pennington look like? What does Hopewell Valley look like? What does our church look like? What are the giving patterns in our church versus what is the level of finances in the community? So there's a lot of data we got, and a lot of great conversations with folks at the Presbyterian Foundation and some folks in our presbytery. And Project Regeneration comes with kind of a list of 7 options for every church to go forward. And as part of those last year, we told you we'd ruled out some, leaving us with these 4 options that are listed here: share our campus, merge with another church, sell all or part of our campus, which might mean moving, or reinvent our church with new ministries. So that's where we were a year ago. And then layered in there, I didn't mention it, but last year we talked about how American Protestantism has changed dramatically in the last 10 to 15 years. You know, the church sizes have shrank, budgets have shrank, and then we here at PPC are among the largest and most active and wealthiest of PCUSA churches in the country. So we are in the 80 to 90 percentile of PCUSA churches. So there is a lot of vibrancy here. So which is part of what led to, we ruled out things like close the doors, you know, age in place and just dwindle forever. Like, we are not at that place. We are not a church of 5 members, all in their 80s and 90s, who are just kind of trying to eke out a little bit more. There's a lot of, it's a lot of life, a lot of vitality here. And so we wanted to be very thoughtful about what is God calling us to do going forward. All right, so, and I know Q&A is at the end, but is everybody kind of caught up? Any major questions on that? Okay, so I'm going to pass to Suzanne, who's going to talk us about what we've done in the past year.
So with those kind of 4 narrowed down options, and your session really felt it was time to do a lot of listening this year. We really couldn't further narrow down those options or make any decisions between them without really listening to all of you as well as to our community. So you might remember we organized focus groups. We had 5 focus groups that were from last November through this January. There were about 30 people from a congregation who participated in those focus groups. And in those sessions, there were some on Zoom, some in person. And we really just did some dreaming together. What do we see as the future of our congregation? What do we hope for? What do we see that's working so well here that we want to continue? And then brought that back to session to really feel a lot of hope about, as Rob said, the vitality that is still in our congregation and the things that you all are open to in terms of some change that might be necessary. And then the next step was really listening beyond our walls and beyond our congregation. So session met with some community leaders from Pennington Borough, from the school district, from Pennington School, and from Capitol Health. And in those sessions, we really asked them, what is your strategic plan? What are your strategic priorities that involve our community? What do you see as needs in this community? And then do you see kind of maybe opportunities where our building facilities, our property could potentially support those strategic needs and priorities? And coming out of it, it was very informational, understanding more about some of the strategic priorities and things going on in our community, but there were no big aha transformational moments of alignment to say, yes, that's the answer. There was no big like lightning strike solution that came out of those conversations, although they absolutely strengthened our connections, I think, to some of those community leaders and opened doors to more conversations, which is really important. There were small incremental ideas, you know, maybe a group here or there that might be able to use our space once a month or once a week, but nothing big and transformational in terms of solutions came out of those meetings. Although, like I said, relationship building for sure. We also learned about kind of the future of the nursery school, some things going on. And actually in the next slide, Hope's going to talk more about that, about universal pre-K and how that might impact PPNS. So that's been part of the conversations and the work this year. We also met with Reverend Molly Dykstra, who's been very involved in First Presbyterian, and Trenton has been involved with actually a number of congregations, Presbyterian congregations that have gone through mergers, have gone through lots of big change. She's also worked with developers on property development with churches. So just had a lot of good insights for session about what some of these things might look like, how they might evolve, things we should be thinking about. We also met with Reverend Dr. Eileen Lidner, who is a long-time friend of Nancy's for many years, who has also been through this type of strategic rethinking process with many congregations involving property, involving requests for proposals out to developers. We asked her lots and lots of questions about process and kind of what comes first and what we should be thinking about. So again, like lots of listening, and these last couple were just listening to other kind of experts and people who have walked this path before to better understand how we navigate it. What are some pitfalls? What should we be thinking about? And it was all very educational for us. And then the other piece of listening that we did, which it isn't a bullet on the screen, but just at our past session meeting, we went back to that HMR report because it had been, almost 2 years since the architects had done their study, and met with Bill Charleroy. So as you all know, as a historical architect, I'm very experienced from our congregation, and just kind of pressure tested that report to say, does this still stand? Do we think we would need a second opinion, or do we need to go back to this report? And really, session came out of that meeting with Bill saying, really feeling confident in that report, that report really was, it was well done, well researched. They really have looked at, the exterior of our facility closely, and, we should feel confident moving forward with that information as we're making decisions. So that's what's happened this year. Lots of listening inside our church, outside our church, lots of information gathering that has happened. So Hope is going to come up and talk about PPNS now.
Well, people who were here last year know that I was a little upset at our meeting. And I actually got to hear my voice last night when I played it, the recap of it. But I would like to say, and I'm very grateful to Session, that we have really worked in partnership this year. I am a member of Session now, and I feel like we're really communicating about the nursery school and what's happening with several areas and what's happening with the church. So I'd like to thank you all on Session very much. New Jersey is moving toward a universal pre-K program for all 3- and 4-year-olds. The hope is that all school districts will have this at some point. And we actually thought it might happen this fall, but I am in contact with the director of pupil services, and the way the funding was going to work is that the school district was going to need to come up with half of the funding per student, which was $16,000 for each child. So they estimated $700,000, which they don't have. So they did not implement it. I have reached out to them quite a few times about a timetable. But honestly, I don't think they know right now, because those of you who live in this district know that the referendum to fix the buildings that exist is coming up in November. And that's really the top priority. And it may also, the results of it may drive when universal pre-K is implemented. So that's something that's unsure. I've attended a lot of sessions on how private childcare centers can incorporate universal pre-K into their own programs. And that would be by providing classrooms. They came and looked at our 2 largest classrooms, 102 and 202, and they're perfect. But it wouldn't employ our teachers. This would be under the Department of Education, not under the Department of Children and Families. So it would not be providing, I have these wonderful teachers, but they're not all qualified to do that. when I went to these original meetings, districts were contracting for 1 year with schools, which is rather short. Now they are moving towards 5-year contracts, but that doesn't fit in very well with what we're looking at with the church. So we've got a lot of pieces that don't exactly go together. The nursery school board is aware of what we're dealing with at the church. And I'm trying to stay in communication with the district as well as I can. But we kind of just don't know at this point, but we appreciate all the support that you give our school. And certainly if we have to close our program, you know, we want to do it in a way that honors the 64 years that the school's been in existence, all the people who've been there, all the teachers and everything. So that's what we're looking at right now, is trying to coordinate a little bit better what the future of the school would be with the future of the church.
Okay, so that's the past year. So where are we now? So given all that we have learned, what we have thought about, what we have prayed about, we're at a place where the challenge is that our facilities are consuming too large a portion of our resources that impairs our service to God. So we are a vital congregation. There is a whole lot going on. You know, as I talked about, we are in the upper percentiles of PCUSA churches, but our building is much larger than our congregation is right now. And that requires us to put a lot of our resources to the facilities that we might otherwise be able to do in more creative ways to serve God and hope all that. So what does that mean for, like, are we back to, we do a capital campaign, we don't do a capital campaign, do we do other things? So we believe that our mission and congregational vitality are best served by restructuring how we approach our facilities, not pursuing a capital campaign right now. So we don't know what the next answer is, but we want to lay out that we are not going that path. We believe that something about our facilities has to change. And I'm going to go into some of the different ways, specific ways that we are starting to look at that much harder. But those conversations we did not want to have before we talked to all of you. And all of this, again, I want to re-emphasize, all of these decisions we're making are based upon the strong vitality that this congregation has. We are vibrant, we are active, and we believe that whatever this next step is, because of our health and vitality, we are well positioned to take that next step forward. So what's next? So there are 4 session task forces that got stood up in the last month that are going to directly engage our community. And again, we thought it was critical that we talk to all of you before we talk to these folks outside. So we're going to hear from each of these task forces in the next few slides. And to point out, these are 4 questions we're pursuing. We do not necessarily believe that any one of them is the specific answer. Where we end up in 5 or 10 years could be a combination of these. It could be something different, but it could very likely, it could be one, it could be many, depending upon kind of what we learn and what we discern as we move forward. So these 4 options: talking to a real estate developer about what they would do with some or all of this property, how we might imagine Pennington having a shared faith center. There are 3 mainline Protestant churches in Pennington and several other communities of faith. Where do they all see themselves in 5, 10, 20 years? And is there a sense that there might be a calling towards a shared faith center? What might it mean if we merged with another PCUSA in the area? What would that look like? And then what would it look like if we physically located ourselves somewhere other than the corner of Delaware and Maine? So to dig into these one by one, first, talking to a real estate developer, and I believe Suzanne is going to talk us through that.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I am representing our team. I love to call it the "we don't know until we ask" group. So it's myself, John Bristol, and Corinne Orlando, who's on Zoom. So we're all here with you today. And we truly don't know until you ask. So as you heard, we started to ask our community partners who know of us, but we have not asked those around us who may be very, very interested in our property and reimagining our property. That can mean with us, that can mean without us, but we do control this process. So a few important things. When you develop, which we're going to be getting help from the Presbyterian and some of their experts and guidance. So we are not doing this alone. They do have individuals who we're going to meet with, and they're going to help guide us through the process. But when you put out a request for proposal, we love acronyms, or request for information, nothing is binding. This is, please, let's see how people may reimagine what we have here. Is it consistent with our mission? Would it be something that we're happy with, proud to be a part of? But again, it doesn't mean just because they put that proposal in that anybody has to accept it. We could get 10 proposals and we could then walk away and say, no, we're going another direction. But we truly believe we have to ask, and it may be really surprising to us, what others in this community may like to see within these walls on this property. They have access to capital and tax credits and things that we could only imagine and truly really don't understand. That's their world. So we're going to bring them into our world, and we're going to see what we do get back. So our next steps, as it says here, is we will be getting guidance and help developing this proposal. We will send it out, and then we'll see what we get back and obviously share with all of you along this journey. And next.
And Hope and I didn't get a chance to say, if you want to come up, please, you're welcome to. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is what would a faith center look like. So to understand that, we have to go talk to these other communities. We have to see where are they thinking and discerning for what their future likes. So we have to meet with those clergy and or leaders, and we have to be sensitive to these different communities have different structures and how they work. So we meet with the right people. We have to keep an open mind of where that faith center might look like. It could be on this property. It could be somewhere else. We don't want to go in with a decision in mind. We also need to think about, would that be a place where all of these communities are able to worship at the same time or not? So you could imagine a structure where that's probably a big number, where 3 congregations might be able to worship all at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, or it could be a structure where only one can worship at a time, and so they, offset their schedules. So just going in with open minds about what that might look like. All right, and next is merger, and Suzanne's going to come back up.
Our group is Kim, who's here today, and Mariah, who is Girl Scout camping, so couldn't be with us today. So we're going to be looking at what a merger with another PCUSA church could potentially look like. We're going to meet with our presbytery to understand the process. So if we were to start an merger exploration process, what are the steps? How is the presbytery involved? Just kind of understand that, because this has happened many times, within our former presbytery and our current presbytery. There's some of it going on. So understanding process from their perspective, and when the presbytery gets involved and when it's just individual congregations. So we'll look at process and bring that back to everyone. We're also going to have some very exploratory, gauging interest conversations with clergy and leaders of nearby PCUSA churches to just kind of understand if they would even be open to starting a conversation with us, and really going in with an open mind to where a merged PCUSA church would be located, here or somewhere else, and a real open mind to how it would be staffed. And I would also add to this slide that we have over the past year also had some conversations with other PCUSA churches in New Jersey that have gone through mergers and talked through like what their process looked like, what were some pitfalls, what were, if they were to do it again, what would they do differently, what worked really well. So we've already kind of gathered some of that, kind of the experiences and recommendations from some other folks who have been down this process, but we're going to just gather more information and just see where there might be some open doors to having conversations. Jacob's going to talk about other locations.
Thank you so much. So Carol and I are going to be investigating other worship locations, and primarily we're thinking about places that are not currently churches. So what would it mean for us to identify another location, either to purchase or to lease, for us to gather as a congregation? And so some of the things we'd like to understand are what are our baseline facility needs. So not going into it with, we're going to find another church that perfectly fits us, but just in terms of what we need to find a space to gather. What do we need in terms of the number of people it needs to accommodate, in terms of classroom needs, office accessibility, other forms of accessibility, and in terms of its location. How can we put it or find a place that's accessible to the majority of our congregation? Our goal there is to think again about costs. And this will probably be informed by all three of the other groups. So as you could have heard, they may be looking for a new space in combination with other churches. They may be looking for a completely new space. They may be in need of a transitional space. So you can imagine some of the outcomes, we would be moving to one place for a while something like a faith center developed, and then we would move into the faith center once it was fully ready. So this will be sort of maybe a catch-all of finding what are the requirements for our facility, what are the costs and implications of buying versus leasing, and ultimately meeting with a commercial real estate broker to think about what are the options available, whether this might be, office conference center space that's currently available for a short term that would accommodate us for a year. This might be a new piece of property that we think we could, have a church on for a more permanent basis. So I think that's it from us, unless Carol, you wanted to add anything? And then Kim is going to talk a little bit about our overall process.
Well, and I'm going to jump in front of Kim just for a second. So we talked about these 4 task forces. I don't think I said anything about timeline. So all of these are starting and will be engaging all of these external groups over the next month. Now, does that mean we're going to have an answer by the end of the year? Of course not. As you get a sense of, these are all complicated conversations to have. We have to think long-term. We have to find times to meet with these people. They have to do discernment. We'll have to think and pray about what we come back with. So I don't want you to think that come January 1, we'll have an answer for you. We're still in a multi-year process. Like, imagine that the answer was, what was the first one? The first one was real estate developer. So imagine that perfect scenario, somebody wants to throw a whole lot of money into this space and still let us stay in the building, and it's like, it lines up amazing. That's still going to take a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years to sort all out. I mean, there's just lots of pieces that have to come together to make all that happen. So just want to make sure you set expectations. None of this is happening overnight. Yep.
I just wanted to end this on a positive note that I have been experiencing with Session throughout this. I recently returned to Session, and I've been very impressed with the work that Session has done in determining possible solutions to our dilemma of the very high cost of maintaining the current status of our church and alternative options that will allow us to continue our mission together. What you have just heard reflects a great deal of research and careful and in-depth interviews with the congregation, the result of which have been presented to you this morning at our special coffee hour. I feel very impressed and proud of the work that's been done to get us to this point in our journey together as we address the necessary changes to how we maintain our church. As we have been told, it's not an issue that is specific to our church. It is happening everywhere. Many congregations are faced with the challenge of maintaining very old and very large churches that need extraordinary care. Our church has addressed these challenges in a thoughtful and comprehensive way, and I am very positive and optimistic about our future. I consider it a gift to serve on session at this time as we work to find a solution that works for everyone in this changing time in our history. Thank you.
All right, that was a lot from us. Now, what's on your minds? Ted, firsthand,
Can you come forward to the mic,
or,
please?
or I can repeat it.
Yeah, you can hear me.
They will not hear you. You get repeated or you come to the mic.
All right, happy to. Really, Rob and everybody else who reported, I cannot overstate how impressed I am with the integrity that you brought to this, with the thoughtfulness, with the self-awareness of exactly where we really are. Well done. Kudos. And like I think Kim just said, I'm actually going to leave this morning with much more optimism and excitement about what the trip that we're on together than I came in with. So kudos.
Thank you, Ted. Other questions, comments?
Pennington has a lot of historic buildings. Excuse me. Look great.
Yes.
Pennington has a lot of historic buildings, and I thought among them is this building. Now, I noticed that the historical, I try not to say hysterical society, the historical society has a lot of restrictions on what you can do. So what is the impact of that on our plans for the future? Plus, has anyone thought about if we are designated particularly historical, are there any grants that we could apply from the state, from the federal government that relate to? I mean, our cemetery alone has a lot of history. So, you know, I didn't know whether you explored that as a team or not. That's my question about it, or my comment.
Great question.
We appreciate that, Nancy. Yes, our cemetery and our sanctuary have state historical designations, and that does limit some of what we can do with this property. We're also part of Pennington's historical district, and some of our property is zoned very carefully on what could be done, and other pieces of it, they're much more open to options. So we've already been engaging in conversation with some of the people from our borough so that they know about the challenges that we're facing. Whatever it is we decide to do will have to be done in conjunction with the local municipalities, boards, and decision making. But they understand it's in their best interest and our best interest for this to be a safe and good and healthy place, and for our church to be safe and good and healthy moving forward. The other part of your question, grants. Oh, you know, if we lived in some other state, this would be different. To my knowledge, New Jersey is the only state that does not allow state grants where there are worshiping people. So if we ceased to worship and be church here, other people could get grants to fix up the building, but not churches. Now, there is some hope that that might change, but we have not seen that change. It has not been realized yet. So we are in a position where we cannot get historic money from the state to preserve our facility.
Who else? Yes.
What is
You
the
gonna-
appraised value of our property?
So the question was, what is the appraised value of the property?
We're still working.
Yeah.
You want to check?
We actually just tried to like get some firm numbers on that a few months ago and had a commercial realtor walk through the facility, and the bottom line is it's complicated to get to an exact number, but we actually are working on that and continuing the conversations to have a ballpark, because that has been a question that's come up a lot with session is, well, what are we talking about? We do have, the 3 parcels of property. So the sanctuary is obviously very different than, the nursery school, the manse. So we're working on it is the answer. We're trying to get some ballpark ideas.
And one comment about the cemetery, it's just a reality that nobody buys a cemetery that doesn't have places where you can bury people, because you can't make money from that. So no matter what we do, at least at this point, we imagine Pennington Presbyterian would still own our cemetery and the scattering garden, memorial garden, where some of our loved ones' ashes remain. That would still be ours. Other options down the road, the presbytery could have jurisdiction over that cemetery, or perhaps we would pay money to the Pennington Cemetery behind us to maintain that. So there are options, but that cemetery means a lot. It has historic value, but it's not something that a developer would want to purchase because they can't do anything with it. So.
Get a call for figure how much we're worth. You look at the insurance company, how much we're insured for.
So Bob's question is, to get a ballpark number for how much the property is worth, could we look at what our insurance company is telling us as part of what we pay for insurance?
That would be on replacement value as opposed to market value.
So John's response is that the insurance company would give you a number based upon replacement value. If tragedy struck and we were going to replace it, they will tell you what is the cost to replace everything here. They will not tell you what we could get for the property if we sold it. Market value versus replacement value. Good question. Good.
Sorry, I just have one more parting thought. And first of all, they were all great questions. So know that when we are doing that request for proposal, all that has to go in there. So we have to put in there and all the zoning so that, because that's what everybody's going to be trying to be doing. Anybody who's interested is going to want to know what parameters they already have to abide by. So that will be going in there. My closing thought is, first of all, thank you for all of your attention and just being here today, but we're not trying to do this all on our own either. So if one of these teams and you think you may have anything you'd like to talk further about or put a buzz in our ear, someone who we could connect with, that's why we left with, you all know us, just grab us, after church one day, send us an email or whatever you may do. We're not looking to do this all alone. So if anybody has thoughts, ideas, or anything you heard today, we are all ears.
Well, one more quick question in relation to what you said. How complicated is the rezoning process in Pennington? Because yes, you have to find out how we're currently zoned and put all that in the request for proposals, but a developer might want to consider rezoning. Is that even in the realm of possibilities in this community?
Yeah, you can. I can certainly.
A lot of meetings. It's possible.
You
I mean,
want to restate the
okay,
question?
sorry, restating the question. So the Leanne's question was, how feasible would it be to rezone if that was something that a developer wanted to do in Pennington? It's possible. It's certainly happened before. There's precedent for it. At the same time, we know the Pennington Borough leaders value kind of the history of this building, particularly the sanctuary and the location. They would like to see this continue as a church. I mean, they've been very clear about that. So as Nancy said, it's kind of a conversation we started saying, then we need help. We're going to need help then. If your interests are for the history and historical building to remain, we have very practical realities we're dealing with. If there's a third party that help us find a solution, we're probably all going to have to come together and find a compromise and a way to make it work. Back to your original question, so the borough is currently wrapping up a master planning process. There typically is rezoning that happens as a result of that. So we could see some reason. I haven't seen any evidence that like our corner is going to be rezoned as anything, but that typically is a process after master planning. And it could be something that comes out of an RFP that we want to pursue and developers talking about those options.
Suzanne, am I also right in remembering that at least some of our lots are mixed use zoning?
Yes.
So depending on what somebody would want to do, it wouldn't have to be rezoned. Part of it is already flexible on what we do with these acres.
Yes.
Other questions or comments?
Anything online?
Yeah, is there anyone online raising a hand?
Quiet out there.
I just want to share one last thought then with you. This has been a long process for Session. We've been thinking about this and praying our way, and you've had parts of that experience as well. But I got to thinking about, our 317-year history and thinking about when Presbyterian Christians first were in this community and they decided they wanted to have a church. Chances are they were first meeting in someone's living room. And then I think it was Armitage, whatever the guy's name was, gave property and he built a little church where our cemetery is now. And then it wasn't long before that space was too small. So then they built what was the second sanctuary there. And then over a period of time, that didn't fit the needs of the church. So they built on the site where our current sanctuary is a much larger facility. And then that one burned down and the church decided to rebuild on that same spot. So our current sanctuary is the sanctuary that was built on top of the burned foundations back in the 1860s. So we have a very old church that's a precious gift to us. But what we're doing now is not really very different than what our church has done all along. When the baby boom happened, and it happened big in Pennington, I remember Margie Coates, bless her, telling us that when they lived down the street with their 5 kids, there was like 25 children on the block. Every house had 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 children. The baby boom was huge. And in those days, the church said, what is our ministry in this time? We need a nursery school. It started off in the corner house and then the facility was built. It's like we've been in this process always of what's going on around us. What does the ministry need? And how do we faithfully do what God is calling us to do? And how do our facilities help us with that or hinder us? So right now we're at a place where a very large and old facility that is very expensive to maintain and will only get older takes more and more of our time and our money, so that when we're cutting down on our mission giving, we're squeezing the staff down. And pretty soon it's like we have this facility, but the ministry is hampered. And so we're in this place a little different, but not really that different from what all of our ancestors have gone through, and trying to figure out what is it we need to be able to be faithful to God for the call right now. What do we need right now? And so that's what we're trying to figure out, is how do we continue to be faithful to God and be Pennington Presbyterian Church? And what kind of facility does that require? What kind of mission giving and staffing and care and all of that do we want to do? And how might it be a blessing to partner with neighbors or to do something different? So these are big questions. And we don't have a clear answer yet, but it's not because we haven't this has not ever gone on the back burner of the stove. Session works on this every single time and in between times. So I hope that you will think and pray about that and stay on this journey with us as we seek to be as faithful as we can to God in this time and in this place. I see Jacob.
I think D is activating your hand.
Oh, we would love to hear from Dee. Can you make that happen, John?
Go ahead, Dean.
Dee, we're ready to hear from you.
I may have missed it, so much has been said this morning, but are you taking into account the new housing that's being built in Hopewell Township? And is that going to add to people coming to our church?
So Dee's question is whether the new housing that's being built might bring new people to the church. That's a great question that we don't really have an answer for. What we know is that there's been other building of new homes in our community in the last 15 years. And we have seen a few people, a handful of people, but not enough to bring us back into filling the sanctuary and being able to share our resources enough to have a couple $1 million to fix the building. So whatever we do, we hope to continue to be a ministry that would welcome those people, whether it's here, in a part of here, or somewhere else. We care about their spiritual needs. We're just not sure whether it's gonna happen in this space in this way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Any other last thoughts? Yes, Nathan, you want to come up or do you want to be repeated?
Yeah, I'll speak. Does the money from Vacation Bible School, does that go to us at all? Because we do host it, and do we get any like cut of that could help us with this?
So Vacation Bible School hopes to break even is the way that works, is they, yeah, they charge as much as they think it's going to cost to do the ministry. And in the past, the other churches have given us some money toward, extra air conditioning and extra cleaning of the building, but it's not really a money maker for us. It's a great model of our churches working cooperatively for something and using the facility that makes the most sense for that ministry. And so in that way, that model actually can help us as we think about, should we be partnering with other churches, and would sharing a facility make it possible for us to do things that we just can't do alone? So thank you, Nathan, for that. Okay, well, why don't we close our time with prayer? God, you are amazingly generous to us, and you give us such love and such hope and an important mission in this community. We pray, oh God, for your guidance. We pray for the Spirit to inspire our leaders, and then as a congregation as a whole, as we make decisions together, point us in the right direction, God, that we can be faithful to you in all things. In Christ we pray. Amen. Thanks, everybody. If you didn't get some, there's still some over there.